everybody.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Gina Smarecki. I am the events manager here at Nuspire, and I'm happy to be your host for this live session today. We're going to be taking a look at the dark web from both the hacker's perspective, so we have the bad guy, and the security provider's perspective, and we have the good guy. So we're going to learn all about the dark web and the dangers, along with how to be proactive and stay ahead of any of those threats. If you have questions today during the presentation, please submit them in the Q&A tab or the chat. Our speakers would love to engage and they'll address questions as they see fit. We'll also try and leave a few minutes at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and just so you know, you will receive an email with a link with the recording as well. So at this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to our speakers today, Chris Roberts and Justin Heard. Chris Roberts is Nuspire's chief strategist and is a leading figure in counter-threat intelligence and vulnerability research. With over 25 years in information security assessments and deep knowledge of regulations, he's a highly credentialed voice in cybersecurity, and he's often featured in major media outlets and speaking at conferences worldwide. Justin is our Director of Security Operations and works to develop and deliver intelligence at Nuspire. He has over 13 years of experience in cybersecurity and has developed methodologies and tools for industry-based threat modeling. Justin previously worked 6 years for a defense contractor as a security engineer and network administrator. Also joining us today is the lovely Francie Dudrey. Francie is Nuspire's Senior Director of Content Marketing and Corporate Comms, and we're lucky to have her on joining today to moderate. So before I hand this over, we would like to get your input on our poll. So let me go ahead and launch this poll here. All right, and the question reads, which of the following best describes your organization's current approach to dark web monitoring? Do you have it covered? Do you do some? Are you planning to? You're just trying to get your environment up to snuff, or you have no idea because you're too busy putting out fires. All right, I see a lot of people voting already.
Still slightly depressed that we can't vote. I'm clicking on the vote.
I know, I want to vote.
Well, what would your vote be?
I would hope I've got at least some of it covered, considering I run so many flipping and proxy servers.
All right, still got some votes coming in here. Well, we've got about 80%. So let me go ahead and end the poll here. And I'll share the results, and you guys can go ahead and have a comment on that.
Okay.
Yep.
Kind of a mixed bag. Nothing.
Yeah, total mixed bag on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully this will help. So I'm taking over right now, Gina.
Over to you, Francie.
Yes. Okay, guys, let's hop on in. All right. So here's what we're going to go through. And I have to say, we have a ton of content today. So I'm going to do my best to keep these two lovely gentlemen in line. But just warning you, lots of stuff today. So you can read everything we're going to go through. I don't want to take too much more time, but let's just say it's going to be quite interesting. And I learned a lot building this deck. So, all right. So let's talk about the dark web. So, Chris, would you like to enlighten us since you've spent some time there?
Yeah, it's I think the best way of looking at it is, and the nice thing about it is next couple of slides talk about it in some deep and some good depth, is if we take a look at everything that's outside of our desktop, our phones, our watches, our iPhone, and all this kind of stuff, we tend to look at everything we classify as everything on the internet. And like anything, there are a couple of different ways to get to it. You can just open up a web browser of your choice and get out there and start searching and doing all sorts of other things you want to do. You can also log into sites, and be it your internal customer site, your internal corporate site, or Congress of Library, all these other sites that typically have like a login or an authentication or a paywall, as we like to call it. We've actually got to put a subscription in place to put those things. You have that. And then we have the stuff that, unfortunately, a lot of the media's kind of put the boogeyman whole thing in place, which is the darker side of the internet. And that typically requires either a little bit more experience, a little bit more expertise, or some specialized software to be able to get to. So that's where we talk about the darker side of it. At the end of the day, as nice as I can put it, it's all somebody else's flipping systems that we are actually just accessing from our own servers. And sometimes we share those services as well.
Okay, so let's surface web. Just a quick rundown.
Yeah, I mean, this is, for me, perfect example. My homepage is the BBC. So I open up the internet, I go straight to the BBC. That's the regular surface web. Now, if I want to log in to maybe the BBC archives or BBC Live, at that point, I'm getting a little bit further down the rabbit hole.
But this here?
This is basically, it's where they, as it says, the best one on this one, and Justin, chime in on this as well, please, is it's typically not always indexed, and maybe it is, maybe the first archive is, but the actual data itself, you won't pick it up for the most part. So a good example, for any of us on here that deal with like skip tracing or investigations or building intelligence packets on people, there's something called PACER. So PACER typically has like all of the court archives, both federal, state, and a bunch of other things. And PACER is a subscription service. And once you're in, you can search everything that's inside of it, but you have to subscribe, you have to validate who you are, and then you're allowed access. And the archives in there are absolutely massive. I mean, it's case history going back years. So that to me is very much more the deeper side of the web.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, they're like those archives of data that's publicly accessible are there, just with a little bit of authentication. So I think, that's a perfect example of, what we consider, the deep web there.
So let's talk about what we're here to talk about. This guy. Get in there, Chris.
The good stuff. It's the good stuff, and it's in some ways it's got a bit of a bum rap or a bad rap or whichever way you want to look at it, because the origins of this go back to a very, very I'm not sure if I call it a noble cause, but very much a case of a overt covert type of cause. In other words, if you had agents or you had people dispersed in countries that maybe were monitoring the networks much closer than they do, and there are some countries we're well aware of that do that, you still wanted to have conversations with them, and you're not exactly going to throw the carrier pigeon over. Smoke signals don't go too far, and picking up the telephone is not a good idea either. So you have this layer beneath the internet, but it's being carried by the same cables that we use. You're not running a different cable or anything like this, but you're doing it in such a way that you're kind of like hiding it. So if I wanted to talk to Justin, I would talk to Francie. Francie, you would talk to Justin. I wouldn't know where Justin was. Justin wouldn't know where I was. Francie would hold those two pieces. And if I really wanted to mess it up a bit, we'd put 4 or 5 more other people up here on the screen, and I'd bounce my signal between them. That works really nicely. On the regular internet, when I want to talk to Justin, I go out, I look up where Justin is, and then Francie, you just hand me off. It's a nice, but we all know where everybody's going.
Right.
Whereas on the darker side of the net, it's very much it's like the elephant whisper thing. I'll whisper one thing gets whispered on, and hopefully gets whispered on correctly.
Oh, so we call that the telephone game here in the US.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah, it's very much that. Now, when I do that, there's all sorts of different ways. The most popular is honestly the one that we're going to talk about, which is Torn Onion.
Let's do it. Let's get there.
Onions. We'll eat onions.
We love onions. Actually, red onions are my favorite. So put that out there. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, Justin, you want to hit this one? You want me to hit this one? Totally up to you.
Yeah. So just like Chris was saying, right? We have when we're trying to communicate on the dark web, it's bouncing between these different routers. And the next part here, it talks about routing, is that we're encrypting that message. So we really the message is not only being bounced through all these different routers, but it's also encrypted. And then we have the relays. So it's, bouncing all over the place. So instead of me sending, a message directly to Chris and saying, hey, Chris, how you doing? I'm going to send the same message, but it's going to encrypt itself. And then it's going to bounce off of all these relays all over the place. So by the time it gets to Chris, he has no idea where it came from. And that's kind of what the onion sites are about, and accessing those onion sites. They use that network to travel and to be encrypted for the anonymity of the whole process of doing things on the web. Because in today's world, a lot of you know this on here, is that a lot of that stuff's logged, right? I can go and look in the SIM logs and see where this guy connected to this this site and went here. He was there that long. When you get into the onion, and we have encrypted traffic like HTTPS, but we can look at that stuff with packet monitoring and SSL inspection and stuff of that nature. In the Tor world, you can't, right? It's a lot more difficult. We're encrypting that message, we're bouncing off all different nodes. So that's kind of how the network works, and that's how it keeps the anonymity of the people using it. And so you can go to these different sites and share information and talk as as whoever you want to be at the end of the day. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that, about the actors or the people that sit on those sites. So I will go to the next slide here.
Well, I mean, the next slide is clearly.
Hold that slide
Oh no,
for a second.
I got too trigger happy.
You got too trigger happy.
God.
Hold that slide for a second. I think it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile pointing out on here, although there is a level of anonymity, the way to look at this is, and this is where, and actually I see one of the questions that came in. The way to look at this, let's just say I go down, I download Onion, Tor and Onion. So I now have my Tor browser and I download, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go surf the darker side of the internet. There's a whole bunch of links you can go find on the surface web. I'll even put the link up for the hidden wiki at some point in time, which is a nice starting place, or some Onion links for you. It is not truly anonymous because you always hit what's known as a gateway or an exit or an entry node. Mm-hmm. So for me, I go from here, from my computer here, to an entry node. Now I go through my ISP, and now my ISP is logging the fact that I'm going to a Tor Onion site. It doesn't know where I'm going, but it knows I'm going somewhere because it can see the traffic type if it's really paying attention. I go to an entry and exit site, and those nodes are run by people. For reference, I think about 400 and something nodes at the moment. There's also a group of us out of Germany that run about 12 or 13,000 proxy servers around the globe. So if you think you're hiding yourself on proxy or Tor and Onion, you're not, because we're gathering all that data to do research on it and to find out what's going on. And quite honestly, to hunt for child predators. That's an entire different conversation to have. That's what we're doing with that. So your entry and exits are typically logged. The stuff in the middle, depending upon who owns the node, depending upon where you're getting sent to and from, you can also start to backtrack on some of that. And it's well worth knowing. And we were talking about this offline, which is, as we go through some of the examples of things you can get and buy and sell and trade, a lot of the stuff you do in this digital world is eventually going to reach you in the physical world. So how well do you anonymize yourself on that? So there's some interesting stuff there. All right.
Can we get to Shrek, please?
We can get to Shrek.
I'm going to be Donkey in this picture with the great.
Well, this was because I put a LinkedIn post out about this a couple of days ago, and I said, I don't know what the heck the post was. It was, what's the commonalities between like icebergs, onions, and something else? And we went off on a whole ogre and Shrek and donkey and all that kind of stuff.
Your brain is a magical place, Chris. You love it. Okay, so Tor browser, it can be a tool for good, because you said there's a lot of negativity around there, but there's actually good things there. Yeah,
and somebody asked a question. I'll answer the question quickly. So the origins of the software come back from, I want to say it was like mid-late 90s. It came out of Naval Research Lab. And again, it was very much so used for naval intelligence agents, kind of as I said on this. So hopefully that one. And then they asked also, can you determine how many relays? Yes, you can actually put yourself in low, medium, or high modes as for how anonymous you actually want to be. And so, yes, there's ways of doing it. It does obviously slow things down because, like Justin said, you're encrypting it and you're bouncing it around, which takes time. It's almost going back to like a 9600 baud modem, for crying out loud sometimes.
Got it. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, this is cool for people like me who are Luddites when it comes to like dark web stuff. I'm like, what does it even look like? This is what it looks like. I would say the design leaves a little to be desired.
Oh yeah, the 90s called and they want their internet back.
I mean, But this is kind of what it looks like. And it's just looks like a lot of just tables and
Well, this is some of it, obviously. Like anything, I'll highlight some of the stuff that we watch. Obviously from a work standpoint, we're looking for breach data, we're looking for IDs, we're looking for passwords, we're looking for company names, we're looking for mentions of all these kinds of things. From a personal research standpoint, I was joking. I am having had young ones and also now going through another set of young ones, this whole conversation of, well, can we have a fake ID to get into, concerts and stuff? I'm like, absolutely. One, I can make you one on the printer I have, or secondly, let's go shopping for one. And so I took them on a wander around the darknet, and they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, they're good IDs. They're great. They're wonderful. Now we'll have to create you a mail account, and we'll have to get you a wallet, and we'll have to feed the wallet, and we'll have to do it anonymously. And then it's going to have to get posted somewhere. You're not going to want to drop it to your mailing address here because that's not sensible. You want to drop it like a couple of hours away. And they're like, that's so much effort. I don't want to go to a concert. I'm like,
Exactly.
Gone are the days of standing on the street just holding the sign with your face in it, right? They turn it off right there, right where you're at.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it.
Okay, let's talk criminal motivations, Chris. And we're gonna have you go through this. Not that saying you're a criminal.
Oh, that's the world that I have to occupy.
Right. You have to think like one.
Well, let's face it, my job is to be the nasty one that comes in and goes, your baby's ugly. And that's my job. And then to explain to them why. So, if you think about it, it's, as it says on there, if you look on the right-hand side of this, if anybody wants to know the price of Bitcoin at the moment, this individual that had actually been out for quite a number of years had to just forfeit 8,100 of their Bitcoins. It's about, I think it's about 33 or 300 million or something. Let's just call it a lot of money. That's come from ransomware. That's come from exploits. That's come from, not necessarily from credit cards. But if we had that previous page, you can see how much the hacking for hire costs, how much, if you want to get the psychedelics cost. So if I'm an attacker in this day and age, typically, I'm not going to be what they call like a full lifestyle attacker. In other words, I'm not going to pick a target. I'm not going to do all the intel and insearch. I'm not going to build my own toolkits, use my own frameworks, and do my own exploits, my exfiltration, wash the money in, and then gain the profits. Too much hassle. And nowadays, on the darker side of the internet, I can buy those services. So let's just say, we're talking about Nuspire. Let's say I've just had a crappy day with Nuspire. I've had enough of the company, and I just want to take them offline for 24 hours. I'd have to go out, buy myself some anonymous servers, go out to Amazon with anonymous cards, do it all, download LOIC, low orbit ionic cannon, and some other stuff, and just beat up on them. Or I can go online and hire myself somebody or do ransomware somebody and just be done with it. So we've morphed into, I'm going there to use my own tools, into I'm going there for services, which is where you get people who are very good at building tools, building breach technologies, doing research, doing insights, doing exploits. But you also get people who are very, very specialized at distribution. So if I've stolen, a million credit cards, they'll sort them out. They'll put them into the different bins for me. So different credit card types, different locations, different systems. And then they go out to various people who will monetize them and sell them and use them in most cases, in a very, very short window that you have to actually use them effectively. If I want to go after Nuspire, I'm going to go online and basically see if anybody's got any Nuspire credentials.
Right.
And go from there. And it's all same. A couple of the slides that we had previously, passports, for good or for bad, the United States is one of those, the country is paved with gold, but, people want to come here for goodness reasons. So that passport's going to cost you, I think the last I checked on US passports, it's about a $4,000 passport to get the passport, driver's license, an 8-year bank account, and a bunch of other things. So, it's not bad, but it's still expensive.
Well, you talk about, we'll go to the next one. You talk about, it's like a business, right? That's how they're
operating. It is a business. It's not even light. It is.
Yeah.
Think about it. If I don't want to work in a, I don't call it a commercial situation because that puts government. If I do not want to work in the ethical, well, then I wouldn't work in this industry. All right, how do we rephrase this? If I want to work on the darkest side of the world.
Do we have any FBI on this chat? Let's
bless them,
oh,
probably. Evidence
bless
item
them.
number X. If I don't want to be ethical in my work practices and I basically want to exploit people, we'll just go that way. This is business. And if I'm taking my time to want to break into Nuspire, I want to monetize that. I'm not going to spend, days and weeks, plotting, motivating, and doing. I want money out of it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I want money or I want to see results. So either I'm going to do it myself or I'll get a team together to do it. And it literally is just business. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I would say I think I looked at a statistics like 98% of all cyber attacks are financially driven, right? They want to
Sure.
make money. It's a very high percentage of the motivation to attack somebody is usually financially driven, and we've seen a lot of this ransomware as a service where they're going out and just purchasing the ransomware, or a ransomware actors going out and purchasing initial access. So hey, we already have access. You have hackers that are just getting initial access, getting a foothold and selling that, right? They don't want to do anything else past that. And so they'll just go out and buy initial access, do ransomware as a service. And it's funny because, one of the, things that you'll see with some of these ransomware as a service is they have customer service lines, right? Like, hey, it's not working right, give us a call, and they have representatives that are picking up the phone and, working it just like a business. So it's an interesting model, but it's financially driven at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
let's
hang on a sec
ahead.
before we go forward. So exactly to Justin's point, if you look on the right-hand side of this screen, the People's Drugstore that's online, and for anybody who wants the link, I'm sure we can provide the link. It's fun, enjoy, have at it, but I would highly recommend don't purchase anything. It's good research. They have a help site. They have a website. They tell when they're shipping. They tell everything else. It's reshipping's guaranteed. There's refund policies. I mean, it's set up as a normal online store. Now, there are two questions. We're going to hit this quickly. How well, if anyone, does the use of a VPN service further obfuscate the use and access to Tor? I would say it's hit and miss. Unless you really, really know what you're doing, setting up a VPN with a Tor node can be tricky. I typically don't use a VPN at all because for me, it's complicated as all heck, doesn't work as effectively and slows things down. However, I also don't use my own computer for searching through the Tor node. I'll use, my next door neighbors. It's much more fun. So I don't know. I typically, if we're using it for research and everything else, we typically are very, very careful how we use virtual systems hosted on virtual sites elsewhere. So we're very, very careful about that. Justin, what's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think it's not something, especially when you get down in there, it's not something you want to just put on your home computer, right? There's backdoors, there's things that you can end up getting that can kind of put you at risk for that. And so having a very controlled your neighbor's computer, no. No, having a really controlled environment for how you're accessing that is definitely recommended. If you're going to go and browse and so on and so forth, even stuff as simple as browsing, I'd recommend kind of segregating the functions, those types of functions.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. I mean, there's most of the browsers these days have either a VPN built in, or you can hit Nord or somebody like that's VPN. For regular browsing, absolutely, I'm 100% on that stuff. Again, I think it's trying to figure out what we're trying to do. The other one, which is it looks like 90 style. Oh, heck yes, and absolutely. Who works on the UI for the dark web? That's a good question. I have a number of sites on the dark web. I work on my own simple ones, but we keep them simple for a bunch of reasons. One, because you're running over it's bouncing around like a freaking ping pong ball. So the least amount of bandwidth necessary to make your thing look decent, the easier and simpler it is. And at the end of the day, for the most part, all you're doing is serving up data sets. So I don't think there are too many people that are worried too much about how pretty their sites look. They just want to do research and resources. And let's face it, a few of them get torn down on a regular basis.
Yeah. But the marketer in me just shudders a bit, but that's okay. It's okay. We're going to get through it together. So let's talk about, we've got some scenarios, because some folks, may think, well, I'm a small business or whatever. I don't really need to worry about it. So let's talk about this. Small business, big target. So you want to talk about this, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, Justin, you're probably in the same boat. You know, you get that phone call going, we've been breached, we've been ransomware. Why did they pick on us? We're so small, we've got nothing important. I mean, the list keeps going on, unfortunately. And I think
Yeah.
this is one of those things where it's not personal. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. It's not personal. Your ass is hanging out in the breeze. I can make some quick and easy money off of you, and therefore I'm going to.
Yeah.
It's as simple as
Yeah.
that. In the
Mhm.
real world, think about this in the real world. I think people there tend not to think about this in the real world. In the real world, if I am walking down a street, if I'm a thief, I'm a criminal, I'm a thief, I'm walking down the street, I have options. I can walk down the street, I can look to see whose garage doors. First past, whose garage door is open. Second pass, I'll go rattle some windows and doors. There's more risk in doing that. Third pass, I'll check your car as well. Possibly even the second pass, I'll check your car as well. In every single one of those, it's completely low risk. If you've left the door open, if you've left the keys in the car, or if you've got the garage open, or you haven't locked the windows, you've made it easy for me. It's got nothing to do with being personal. It's got nothing to do whether you're in a small house or a flipping McMansion. I don't care. I can get in, I can get what I want in 30 seconds, and I can get the heck out of there. It's simply business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think someone had a comment in here, but how big are your friends, right? Even though
Mhm.
you're a small business, you could have connections to third parties that, or credentials to third party applications that could potentially help them. But to Chris's point, path of least resistance. I mean, it as easy as it can get, that they're going to go down that path. Another thing you find with some small businesses is, sometimes their security practices aren't as strong. So you have users using the same credentials for the domain as they use for, signing up to, get that, get that new car, or win something or something like that, or even, their email login that, gets breached, and we start seeing that email breach with password, and that password matches their domain password. So you see a lot of that as well. And like I said, to Chris's point, it's just easy, right? Why not? If it's the door's already open, why not just walk in and take what I want, as opposed to having to climb 2 stories and go in through second story window. I don't want to do that. But yeah, it's a really good point there.
I think it's, Rachel Arnold put it perfectly, which is, target, how big are your friends? Back to that supply chain third party attack. We see that time and time and time and time again. Unfortunately, in our industry, we trust our vendors, our suppliers, and our third parties. At the end of this talk, we got a whole bunch of questions for everybody. That's part of the parfait cake thing is now get out there and actually quiz your partners more effectively. It's the same thing we did. We did talk a while ago on choosing a proper MSSP. We give you 10, 15 questions to ask to better validate what they're doing with your data, your systems, your integrity, your information, a whole lot. The other one on this one as well, which is big for me, is, and there's almost a bit of a joke for those of us in the darker side of the net community, is we all use the same computer in North Korea. And as much of a joke it isn't. Which is, if I'm going to launch an attack, or if I'm going to take something or do extortion, I'm sure as heck not going to use my computer. So again, your small business might have a couple of open windows. If I can get you to take the blame for breaking into somebody, then I'm going to use your system, which is why so many times, so many of us in this industry, when Congress says, hey, we need to attack back, we need to hack back, we need to attack the people that are breaking into us, I'm like, don't do it. Because the ability to effectively identify the adversary is, for the most part, not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that with IR and attribution and not spending a ton of time.
Attribution, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the personal logins and all that fun stuff. Chris, you look disgusted.
Oh, once upon a time, it used to be like the digital fingerprint. We started up when we started talking about this stuff years ago, it was the digital fingerprint. Then it became the digital footprint. Now I swear it's like the digital belly flop. We put so much of ourselves on the internet that building a profile of us in most cases is relatively easy. So, if I want to know about Justin, can I go out there? Can I profile Justin? Can I look at his LinkedIn? Can I look at any other profiles? Has he got Facebook? Has he got Twitter? Has he got TikTok? Then I can go, well, okay, where's Justin based? Well, let's go look on Craigslist and see if Justin's selling anything or buying anything on Craigslist. Let's go look on Personals. Let's go look on Farmers Only. Let's go look on all of these other sites. Let's go look at the school district and see if Justin or any of the kids are there. Let's go look and see if he's got family and friends. And so I build up this profile of Justin. Now I've got maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of Justin's email accounts. And, you know, I start looking at this stuff and I suddenly realize, well, hang on, I see Justin's kids and I see the computers. Well, are they using the same computer as well? So you get all of these bits of information and all of a sudden you realize, well, Justin, sorry, I'm picking on you, Justin. Justin suddenly is selling. We did this for a beautiful attack. It was a Justin, and they bought themselves a brand new oven, gorgeous oven. It had a digital system in it. It was an internet connected oven. And so they were talking about it on the forum, and we figured this out. And so we ended up helping them with their digital connected oven that wasn't connected, broke in, payloaded the darn oven, and took over the entire house. So
Wow.
This isn't hard. It just takes time. It just takes time and effort, and it just takes knowing where to look for this stuff. And then if I've got maybe Justin's home password, are we reusing passwords? You know, we talk about passwords a lot. Are you using, like, the top left is your, I don't care about the passwords, all the way down to the, I've got kryptonite and this thing better not be on the internet password. If those two cross, or if your corporate and your personal passwords cross, then you got problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, Bob said something about, we could probably talk about this in a little bit, but keep it in mind, services that claim they will clean up your dark web information. So let's put a pin in that, because we're going to start talking more about the specifics around dark web monitoring. Let's go to just some of the other fun things that people like to leverage with the dark web. Like doxing.
Who wants to? Justin, you want to hit this one? Or you want me to hit this
Justin,
one?
you want to talk about it?
Sure. Let's talk about it. So, you know, we see this a lot. I'm sure everybody's received a phishing email from their CEO asking for Amazon gift cards, right?
Yes.
Our
CEO does not need an Amazon gift card, I promise.
Yes, it is. You know, I've called him plenty of times, like, hey, you need these gift cards? Like, so you see that, but you know, also from there, you know, you have different extortion techniques. We've seen a lot of times where, like, even the ransomware has, ransomware used to just be ransomware, right? They would just, they ransom your systems, they would lock everything down and say, hey, give us money. It definitely evolved over time to where it's like a dual attack, right? They're doing ransomware, and they're also stealing a bunch of data. And so now you're locked out, and they say, you're going to pay. Maybe you have backups, right? Maybe people are getting a little bit better at keeping backups, and they can recover from ransomware, where they're like, well, we have your data, so we're gonna put it out on our public site, and a lot of ransomware service does this. We'll put your data out for everybody to see if you don't pay the ransom. So, like, you see a lot of that ransomware / extortion happening when it comes to data. And really, data is one of the most important things for companies. It's one of the things that they lose. That can definitely change the course of where they're going. And threat actors know that. They know that. They can also, use that information to corrupt the reputation of your company, right? If I'm banking with, a specific bank, and I find out that they had a cyber attack, well, I probably don't want my money there anymore, right? Like, now they have my social security number, and, like, it's terrible, right? And I have to, then they give you these free, social security monitoring and credit monitoring services to try to make up for it. It leaves a bad taste in the person's mouth after experiencing something like that. And I think, time has really shown that, cyber attacks in general and data in general are just becoming more and more important and more targeted. No one wants to see their information out there. And then when you can see what they can do with your information to affect you, right? Like, there's a difference between, getting my email and getting my social security number and going out and buying cars, and so those things can affect you. And so, threat actors really leverage that and dig into, being able to leverage that data to extort and, tarnish the reputation that you can have.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit the reputation one
ahead.
for a couple of different reasons. And again, this is something that we talked about offline. So I had to do a bit of an admittance because I think, Francie, I can't remember what were we talking. Oh, I know what it was. We were talking about the reputation on the darknet of some of the sellers.
Yes.
And I said, I had to, so I've run some interesting stuff on the internet. We'll just leave it at that. And one of the things I ran was a reputation engine, and we were able to affect Google rankings very, very successfully. And we didn't just use it for Google rankings, we used it for Amazon, we used it for IMDb, which is the movie database. We used it for a number of different places because we had a number of clients that were doing certain projects or were selling certain things and wanted their rankings further up. We also use it in the inverse to push people's information down. And this comes up on a question that came up just now about, I think Bob said something about this as well. What we would do is it's very hard on the public, let alone the freaking darker side of the net, to get your data taken offline. But most people don't search beyond page 2 or page 3 of Google. So you affect the internet rankings by spawning 13,000 proxy servers and 400 Tor nodes, a whole bunch of accounts and logins and logs, and you start getting the positive stuff posted further up. You start having interactions globally on that stuff, and it actually pushes the bad stuff down. So we did a lot of that. There were times we worked with lawyers to get takedown notices, 50-50 on that. But for the most part, what we were doing was affecting rankings on individual targeted people and various other things. So the reputation stuff is very, very, very necessary these days. And the other part that we don't go into here, for those of you that watch the finance markets, the penny stock trading stuff is another one that can be heavily affected by some darknet and surface net stuff, which is I'll buy a bunch and then I'll go hog wild on trying to get it promoted and I'll sell it as soon as it pops. So there's some really interesting stuff on this.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Francie. I was going to say, just on the reputation thing, we've seen that technique used before, right? Like someone, if I type in my bank in the search bar and the first thing that pops up looks exactly like my bank URL, I'm going to click it and use it as if it is, right? And so it's just something to keep in mind, right? Is, just because, it looks like it's supposed to be, it was there before, those things can change with ranking and reputation with those sites. And, there's techniques that attackers can use to push theirs up. Something as simple as a driver install, right? Maybe I'm looking for a new driver for my graphics card. And I type it in there and it's the first one that pops up. I click it and install it. Well, there's a possibility that you're not going to the right place. So just making sure that you're keeping an eye on that, because they do use that as a way to kind of get a foothold into your computer, and that can lead to all kinds of other things.
So fun. I was just going to say the last one because I've seen this happening where it's kind of like they double dip. So they'll exfiltrate your data. They want you to pay them to get your data back or unlock, but then they'll say, oh, we want more because we're going to tell the SEC that you haven't reported this breach within the time period that you're supposed to. That's real nice.
Yeah. And that, you always get those questions during IRs is like, when's the right time to say I lost data, right? And it's the first question that comes up a lot of times in these IRs, like, did they exfiltrate anything? We're like, we'll get there. We got to figure that part out. But it's usually one of the most important things for them, because they got to figure out if they have to report it and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's another technique that can be used as well.
And it's about as clear as mud because the policies, there's no federal policy. Well, SEC for publicly traded companies.
SEC,
but like
a 3-day rule.
Every state has different policies. Yeah. So like trying to keep track of that is just, it sounds like a nightmare to me.
Well, I mean, that's why, this is why we, again, talking offline, this is, the first conversation with Justin, when Justin told us like, hey, how's it going? And who are you having to deal with today? Because as a service, that's what we do. Our job is to go in there and be that knowledgeable entity that goes, hey, we got you covered. Because, and we talked about this on other podcasts. I think we talked about this on the weekly one, which is it's no one organization has all the knowledge. So at some point, you've got to take a step back and go, hey, we're going to have to get the MSSP involved. We're going to have to get the insurance company involved, because they have that specialized knowledge, because they live on that on a daily basis, unfortunately.
Yep. So let's talk dark web monitoring. So Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about what it is, like how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a lot about what the dark web is, the type of data that we see on there, and it is vast, right? There's things from, purchasing psychedelics to getting credit cards to getting fake IDs to getting, social security numbers. There's so many things on there. When we look at the dark web from a service perspective, there's a few things we're looking for. And there could be a combination of these things: credentials, initial access brokers, mentions of companies, GitHub repositories that could potentially have code. A lot of times what you find is that there's a time before the attack happens. We call it staging in the attack framework. That happens in the dark web sometimes, right? That staging could be some code that's put out there that's scanning particular domains and you may be trying a specific exploit against it. That's some information that we can gather from there. You can start to get an idea of the different vulnerabilities that are popular around different threat actors from the forums. What are they talking about a lot? Are they really interested in this vulnerability on this firewall? Are they creating POCs for or exploit kits for this other CVE? And so those are some of the type of data we can get. Just general chat, right? If my company is showing up and someone says their name on the dark web in a forum that's made for buying credentials or getting initial access, those are the things that we're looking at on the dark web. And you need a person sitting there to really contextualize what's being said, right? It could be that someone mentioned an article, and we've seen this before, right? We wrote an article at Nuspire and it ends up on the dark web. Someone's talking about that article in reference to some ransomware, and so we get an alert and says, hey, someone's talking about Nuspire on this forum, and we also see that this ransomware is being mentioned, and it turns out it's our publication. So there's stuff like that. So you need someone sitting there to kind of contextualize. And I'm sure you've seen Josh Smith on some of these. That's a lot of the stuff he does. So Francie doesn't have to,
If only I could count those as like share of voice, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
If I could get some credit for look at this exposure on this content, people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. Okay, so let's talk. We're going to talk some scenarios on where dark web monitoring can come into play. So let's talk. And these are just hypothetical kind of scenarios, but these things could absolutely happen. So let's look at Acme Manufacturing. So do you want to talk a little bit about this, Mr. Justin? And
yeah, for sure. And so this is a scenario, of course, but this is a scenario that we've seen, right? These are things that happen, very often where there's credentials for sale in the dark web forum. We can pick up on that and react. And that reaction could be just reaching out to the customer and say, hey, you have some credentials in the dark web forum. These credentials seem to match your complexity that you guys have assigned. Please check this account. And if we have log data, you can go and check the log data to see if that user's been up to anything funny. So the scenario here is we find some credentials. We get an alert on it. We let the customer know. We immediately change the password. Right? We're going to look through the logs and figure out, has that user done anything funny or logged in from, we call it speed of light, right? Logged in from, New York, and then the next time we see him in, China within the same day. So we look at stuff like that. That can sometimes, bring things up like, hey, we don't have two-factor. We need to get two-factor on here. These credentials are being used. And then, ultimately prevent loss. It can prevent loss. And a lot of these attacks, all attacks start with initial access, whether that initial access is social engineering, whether it's a connection from the outside, through RDP or some type of VPN. That's where it starts. And so this is kind of where we can get a little bit more proactive and, hey, you're showing up here, let's take care of it before they actually use those or sell those credentials to someone who's going to do something malicious.
Yep. Chris, what are we looking at? You provided the image on the right. I have no idea what that says, what that is. It looks terrible to me.
Yes, it's not great. We'll start with the easy one. So for those of you, again, familiar with just the regular surface internets, there's you have Pastebin. Now, Pastebin it used to be an amazing cesspool of passwords, accounts, identities, credit cards, and everything else. It's cleaned up its act somewhat. What people tend to forget about is there's about 100 or so different flavors of pastebin on both the surface web and also a couple of paywall sites. But our wonderful world of the darknet has exactly the same thing as well. And there are, shall we say, less restrictions. So I wandered around the darker side of the internet the other day, and I was looking for passwords and I was looking for secret keys, and guess what I found? So, now we have a nice one. Now we have a user ID, a password, a pound, and a local host. Now I grabbed an easy one, but you can turn around and tell this stuff is all over the place. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's not just local host. It's also one of those things where GitHub and JetBrain and some of the other forums like PHP forums, Rust forums. I mean, I do a lot of stuff in Rust and Java and some stuff for AI learning. And there are a lot of people who just post their stuff out there, some of it to help and some of it to research. And there's accounts and passwords and all sorts of stuff in there. So it isn't necessarily that somebody has stolen a password or that it's also necessarily just for sale. It's the fact that unfortunately we lose the darn things. And Phil was talking about, with MFA and passwordless and how do we keep users from reusing stuff. And I put something in the chat because I referenced some stuff. I built some stuff out for Wiser, who we partner with a while ago. And there's just all the awareness training, security training, password training, and how to help users understand and give them the tools to succeed. So I think this is one of those things where, you tag team. On one side, you're looking on the internet, you're looking on the darker side, you're bringing somebody like us on board to go, hey, do us a favor, look for our corporate accounts, look for this, look for 10 different versions of our company name, look for these critical systems and a whole bunch of account info. On the other hand, we're also going to train our users. And when we do see some stuff, we're not going to go there and smack a user upside the head because that just doesn't work. We're going to go there and help educate, help learn, find out why it happened. Was it a tool breakdown? Was it a communication breakdown? Was it a technology? Was it a person? What was it that caused it to happen? Remediate that, and off we go again.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I think, one thing you see about these is, and this is a great example. So, we get an alert for, GitHub, and it looks like it has, code, and, in certain instances, like, yeah, maybe the shared key's not in there, but there could be other sensitive information in there about the topology of the network, naming schemes, that people don't really think about when they put it in there, right? And, when you have someone look at it from an attacker standpoint, they'll be like, oh, okay, well, they, looks like these systems live here. Here's the directories that they're in. That's a good starting point for me. So a lot of times it's kind of inadvertent too. Like you're just putting some information out there, maybe just trying to be helpful, but there's some identifying information in there that can help kind of build a package to attack.
Awesome. Okay. So this is another case study, and we are looking at like 13 minutes left, so we may have to kick it up a notch.
We can run this one.
Talk like the Micro Machines man. That's probably a very dated thing that I just said, but look it up. Look it up if you're a Gen Zer. So Acme Construction, surge of phishing kits. So what would they do?
Yeah. Quick thing here. And so one of the things we talked about is looking for trends and things changing in surge. And, if we're looking for the different, the domains that are associated with certain customers, we can see increases in things, right? And kind of check that out. So action here, getting customers aware that phishing's coming, right? And this is maybe what it's related to. And this goes back to user awareness. I know we talk a lot about that, but it's super important. It's probably one of the easiest things to exploit, and can lead to some giant, security incidents for even the biggest of companies. And we've seen this in the past. So just being able to identify that and proactively, make people aware is super important. And this kind of goes down into what we talked about with, ransomware as a service or attacks as a service. That's exactly what this is, right? It's just kind of packaging it up for you and say, hey, here you go. Go try to make some money. Maybe, they even get a kickback. The person putting it out there gets, hey, we get a percentage kickback on whatever you make out of this. We see stuff like that as well.
Let's go to the next one. Okay, so automotive, Acme Automotive. This is another thing that happens where customer info, financial records, all that stuff's on the dark web. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so you can see things out there that's customer related. There could be something as simple out there as, the users that are in your company and what their title is. stuff like that, or vulnerability scan that got leaked that maybe someone was trying to share that they're selling, that kind of lists the different applications, which can be super powerful from an attacker standpoint, to say, hey, they have this particular tech stack. Let's go look at the vulnerabilities for that. So these are things that can potentially be leaked out there, in things that we look for from investigative standpoint and create alerts around, and then contextualize and respond properly. So in this instance, you can respond with an investigation, obviously notifying the customer, doing some vulnerability scans to make sure that those applications are patched, and then backups and an IR plan in general is a good way to move forward there.
Chris, do you want to talk about these stats that you provided?
Yeah, I'll go again, 10 seconds on these. I mean, this is not a full list. Let's just be very honest. This actually comes from a site that I contribute to, one of the few, and we catalog breaches. And as you can see, 35,000 breaches, 17,000 unique ones. In other words, companies are getting hit more than once. Subtle hint, fix your stuff. And if don't fix it and then relax, fix and continue fixing. And given just the amount of data that we have, we've managed to lose more people's data than exist on the planet at this current moment in time. Yay for us.
Super. Now, is this all time? Is this past year? What's the time?
This is all time. You can break privacyadvice.org has an amazing interface. You can break it all. I love this stuff.
Oh, that's just disconcerting. Okay, so let's talk about dark web monitoring, kind of DIY MSSP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can dig in here. So there are some things that we can do, right, without having it in a service. And so there are some DIY sites. There's Have I Been Pwned is a site that you can look for just to see if your password.
We have that, yeah.
Yeah, so there are some things that you can do. You do get some control. If you can kind of search for your things in the dark web, but one of the big parts of getting good information on the dark web is having those personas and those people that can get to the right spots to find the data that you need. So that is a pro to using an MSSP or another vendor for that. And that comes down to the cons, right? So limited access to the data sources, right? I couldn't just jump on the dark web and automatically get all this great stuff. So we got to kind of rely on some open source tools and things of that nature to get to that when we're in the DIY situation. It is time, we talked about, it is time intensive. So we talked about, those guys that are collecting that information and contextualizing it. So we're not creating alerts and a fire drill because, one of our articles showed up on the dark web somewhere. So you have to have someone that kind of knows the language and can look at the data and make sense of it. And then, we can create alert fatigue with some of the alerts that come there. From the MSSP side, pros 24/7 monitoring. So these things show up all the time. And so having someone to be able to look and capture that data, contextualize it, and take action as soon as it becomes available, hopefully before it's sold to someone, right? Before it's sold to someone who's going to use it for attacking or doing a larger attack. There is, highest service costs is kind of that. And then it does require a partnership, right? It is a partnership between your MSSP and the person getting the service. We do these things called intelligence package where we sit down and we figure out, what are all the different names that you could potentially call your company? What are some of your, most valuable resources called projects that you're working on that we can add in here for monitoring? Where do your users work from normally? What are your domains? What are some specific URLs that you think could be of interest? All of those things are something that we like to collect in the beginning as an MSSP to kind of set us up for success there. And then the hybrid approach, best of both worlds, do a little bit yourself, outsource a little bit of some of the other work. And ultimately that's, I consider that partnership and working together to kind of come to a solution that works and is at a very nimble that's able to respond to those different things.
Love it. Okay, so let's talk next steps. Chris, rapid fire.
I think, definitely on this one. So vendor landscape, I mean, it's simple. And we have a list of these questions at the end as well, is taking a look at the data. There's a ton of data out there. How often is somebody crawling it? How often are they looking at it? And how often are they going to recrawl it? Because we were getting last week's data, but you want today's and yesterday's data. Accuracy and validation. I'm hacked off with Acme Corp is very, very different than I hacked into Acme Corp. You don't want to alert on the first, but you sure as heck want to know about the second one in whatever sense it is. Actionable intelligence. If we go back to our iceberg, the very top of the iceberg, big and bulky. Welcome to data. As you get further down the iceberg, you basically turn it into information as you start sorting all out. Then the bottom of the iceberg, that tip that you really care about, is intelligence. What methodology they use to actually take all the stuff and boil it down to what you actually care about. All right, that's that one.
Making the case.
All right. So this one I like. This one's good for leadership. It's very much it talks about brand protection, brand prevention of issues, financial side of things, early warning system, and how do we get ahead of things? How do we maintain fiduciary integrity and all those things? For the CFO, and I've done this and we've done it successfully a couple of times, which we've managed to year over year reduce the cost of our cyber liability insurance. It's absolutely fantastic. Between that and also helping to understand where to spend the money. If I know what's coming over the parapet, I know where to spend my money more effectively. And then for the board, it's literally helping the board understand, as it says, on their business continuity, understanding what is going on the landscape, understanding how to translate tech into much more of a risk and probability of risk, and letting them make decisions from there. So that's a good one on that one.
Okay. Justin mentioned, have I been pwned?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on our list.
Yeah. Do you want me to speak to this?
Mm-hmm.
All right, DIY starter kit. Have I been pwned? First one on the list. So that's where you can check your emails to see if there's any leaks for that stuff. Don't be surprised if you're on there or some of your emails are on there. And it'll kind of link the breach that it was attributed to. Shodan, great search engine for figuring out what's out there. Attackers use Shodan, right? They're just, hey, I got this, I want to look for, I got an exploit kit for this particular CVE. I want to look for everybody out on the internet that has something externally facing that's susceptible to that CVE. I suggest you go on Shodan and do a search for your IP addresses and figure out what's out there, because the attackers know it. The Harvester, great way to gather email addresses and subdomains. Also see what the attackers see, right? This is something that they can run, and they do, right? It's really easy. People don't think about like virus total. Like attackers go on virus total. Like they look for the hashes and the different, see if they popped up on there. Maltego, a great way to visualize some of this stuff that we're talking about, kind of build a graph around it. And then Alien Bolt OTX is an open source intelligence. We actually pull in some of their open source intelligence into our TIP or threat intelligence platform, but it's a good start to threat intelligence from a tactical standpoint, talking like IPs, URLs, hashes, domains, and it's crowdsourced by the community, which is always a great thing.
Love it. Putting it all together, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the call to action. Everybody's like, hey, you've listened to us for the last 50 odd minutes talk about this. Now it's time for you to do something. As Justin well alluded to, there are some really good open source tools out there. We literally gave the tip of the iceberg, or the first layer of the onion, or the top layer of the cake, whichever way you want to look at it. There's a lot of stuff out there you can do yourself. That
you want to talk about cake?
No, I'll go back to that one for a wee second.
Okay.
That helps basically that helps give you an idea and understanding. And then from there you go, okay, we need more help, or we need more resources, or we need to do it together. And then we can basically gives you the insights, gives you the ideas, and then you can turn and it starts making the case to the business case to actually bring it together. So then we can hit parfait and cake.
I just was hungry. Sorry.
I couldn't help it. I searched for cake and then I realized it was parfait. So we have cake and parfait. So on the right-hand side is an entire set of images of cake and parfait on the internet. On the left-hand side is actually more questions that Justin and I have been talking about behind the scenes, where we talk about what questions to ask any potential vendors, suppliers, or anybody that's coming to you saying, hey, we have a darknet feed, or we have a darknet service, or whatever the heck else it might be. This is screenshot this slide, ask for the slides, whatever it needs to do. These are the ones that we need to be asking people about, definitely.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, now here comes Gina. Gina, we gave you 1 minute. You're welcome.
Sorry.
That is fine. Oh my, thank you guys for sharing all that. It was a lot, right?
Woo!
And thank you, Francie, for moderating. I think we answered everyone's questions. So
most of them, yeah.
I'm just going to share a couple of resources here, and we'll let give everyone back their day. I did want to quickly mention the next webinar that we will be having, which will be on July 30th, where we'll have Justin back again, along with Josh Smith, our threat intel experts, to give you guys a glimpse of the threats and attackers strategies that we've observed in Q2 this year. So our report will be coming out that day, and we'll give everyone a look. I'll share the link in the chat for that in case you are interested in registering. That there. And then a couple links here I'm going to share real quickly. We have a blog and some service information if you are interested in dark web monitoring or want to learn more. There is some information on our website. There we go. I'll also put those in the email that you guys get tomorrow that goes out. So
Perfect.
I want to just thank everybody for coming. If you have other questions, you can email us at webinars@nuspire.com or through our website. And there is a short survey that will pop up if you'd like to give us any feedback for our webinar today. And we are at time. So any quick closing thoughts, Justin or Chris?
Go for it, Justin.
No, I just start DIY. Some of the links that we provide, there's stuff that you can do today to be better suited for threat intelligence in general, and some of the dark web monitoring stuff. And so I encourage you to dig in. We provide the service, but I definitely encourage you to dig in. There's stuff you can do today. And I think we got some good actions, but I appreciate everybody stopping by, and it was great talking to everyone.
Yes, likewise. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining.